Well, hello everybody. It's time for another edition of ZBEST DIY camera restoration and repair YouTube videos, um, where we go through repair and restoration and cleanup of various vintage photographic pieces. And today we will be focusing on a very old camera. This is the 1929, 1930 Vollenda 48 127 film camera. This was one of the cameras that Dr. August Nagel designed and manufactured for George Eastman and the Eastman Kodak Company. Just a beautiful camera, and we're going to go over the cleanup and restoration on this, fine camera. It's in pretty good shape. Everything is very nice and tidy on this particular version. As you can see on the inside, this took a 127 size film, and the two windows here was for the purpose when you had film in, you would actually advance the film to number 1, and then you would take that same number and then you would advance that to the second window. Kind of the way that they did things in the day, and that would give you the 16 exposures that you would typically get from the Vollenda, which it says right here, Vollenda number 48, that was created by Eastman Kodak in their Stuttgart, Germany plant, headed up by Dr. August Nagel. A little history on Dr. Nagel. He began his camera design business in 1908 as Drexler and Nagel, and they became the Contessa Camera Work a few years later. And in 1919, he bought the Nettle Camera Work Company and combined the operations to create the Contessa Nettle AG Company. Then, of course, after World War I, it was a little bit difficult economically in Germany after that time, and a number of the manufacturers and designers of fine cameras, they kind of went belly up at that time because of the economics, and Nettle was specializing in the folding plate cameras of the day. That's where they take sheet film, and they used either the glass or sheet film. And one of the company's specialties was a wide range of stereo camera models, and this is where they would have two separate pictures on a piece of actually like a picture, and then you would view it through a special viewer, and that was a really a neat way of looking at pictures at the day. It gave you 3 dimensions. Although Dr. Nagel's designs were technically successful, financially, he was finding it challenging to keep things going much longer, and he needed to join with a few other companies. And so in 1926, Contessa Nettle merged with IKON, Ernemann, and Gertz, forming the famous photographic giant ZEISS IKON. ZEISS IKON continued to produce cameras, the camera series of Contessa Nettles and others before, during the merger. And the Contessa name was used by ZEISS IKON actually until the 1960s. In 1928, Dr. Nagel, because of internal politics there at ZEISS IKON, decided to start another one of his optical businesses named the Dr. Nagel work, and became famous for a small format camera called the Nagel Pupil. And in 1932, George Eastman of Eastman Kodak entered into a business model with him, and they formed the Dr. Nagel work, and that was actually the Stuttgart, Germany branch of the Eastman Kodak Company of Rochester, New York. So that's kind of a little bit of the history where the Vollenda came from. The first three cameras that Dr. Nagel worked on for the Eastman Kodak Company, as you can see here, this says Kodak. And this was a very beautiful lens, the 3.5 f3.5 50 millimeter lens. It was a Schneider Kreuznach Radionar, which is a very fine lens. And the way that you would work this is by actually cocking the shutter here, and then pressing the exposure button on the bottom of the lens, if you can see that right here. You would also adjust the f-stops right along this top band. It was a very simple camera, yet it took beautiful pictures, and it is amazing the optical prowess that these early Dr. Nagel cameras had. This particular model, when you get a camera such as this, it's always a good idea to check the inside for any kind of light leaks, and what you do typically is you flash a light all around this, in a dark room if possible, and see if you can see any light coming through the bellows that typically have issues in a camera like this with these bellows. And this was a pretty good, pretty well maintained camera by the person or the persons that had owned this, since the late 20s, early 30s. What we typically like to do is we get a little blast of air, very lightly, kind of dust it a little bit like this with any dust product. This happens to be the Dust Off. That works pretty well. And then very lightly, you want to be very careful with this, not to go overboard, but just from a distance, you want to give it a cleaning like this to get off the the dust particles initially. And as I mentioned, this is a very decent, well-maintained camera. A lot of times the red plastic where you see through is deteriorated, but this is in good shape too. The thing with this is that you have to be careful when you photograph with this using, and I'll share with you the size of film that is used with this camera. Is the 127 size film. This was created by the Kodak company, and if we take this off, there's no film in this, and I'll just to show you what the size of the roll looks like, which is bigger than 35 millimeter, but yet smaller than the other films of the day of the the 620 and the 620 and 120 size films. So it was a happy medium, and it created nice pictures. The quality of the pictures were very, very nice. Eastman Kodak and a number of other companies sold the 127 size film in the day. I'll just wrap this up and put this over here. This came on rolls this size, and you would thread your film from one side to the other, just like you would a 120 or 620 film, to use this fine camera. In the day, the speed of the films were not that fast. I think 25 ISO or ASA or DIN actually in the European system of measuring the speed of the film. So the red windows did not fog your film. Although if you were, when I use this camera today, I definitely cover this up. I cover this up with I have a square of black paper that I usually typically cover this up so it doesn't fog the film, because the films are a little bit faster today, a lot faster. And you don't want to fog your film. The light sometimes will leak in here if it's not covered. So we've kind of given it a dusting. We'll close this back up from our Vollenda 48. And the next thing that we might want to do is, we might want to take our cleaning cloth and just kind of wipe around here. This is a movable lens. We want to make sure that there's no dust on here. We just clean that out, and we give that a light cleaning. And then what we can do as well is clean the glass window in the viewfinder, which is glass, and we can clean the inner area. You got to be careful not to bend this too much. Although this is a very strong unit, it's in really nice condition. Very fortunate. The chrome is still in great shape. The bellows are in good shape, and I tested the shutter speeds, and they seem to be very accurate. So that's kind of a neat thing with this camera. Film you can purchase from a number of companies. B&H in New York has got it. Although I purchased these from an individual on eBay at JRDNMRK, Jordan Mark. And you can reach him at funtimecamera@gmail.com. That's funtimecamera@gmail.com. And he actually does respooling and things like that from because they don't actually make the 127 size film any longer. All 127 film is respooled from 120 film these days. So they get the larger rolls, and then they arrive on these small rolls like this wrap. This happens to be a Ilford, a Delta 100 black and white film. Very nice film to use with this camera. If you ever get an opportunity to shoot with one of the early Nagel cameras, they are just terrific. They're just beautiful pieces of German engineering from the day. And this is a beautiful example of those fine cameras that that they had designed and were designed by Dr. August Nagel and the Eastman Kodak company. So that's just a little, couple of pointers. When you get a bellows camera, you want to look for the any kind of light leaks. You want to make sure that your shutter is working, and also that your f-stops and your focusing is working. This particular focus mechanism on here, this is just on a scale. It's called scale focusing. And you can, either use a range, a little range finder that they used to have to check for the, the distance scales and things like that. Or you can use it at, for scenics and that type of thing at almost infinity, and then you wouldn't need to make any adjustments. So this is just a beautiful camera. This closes here. When you press here, this closes ever so nicely, and then you close down the viewfinder window. And these were early pocket cameras. The later cameras that Dr. Nagel created were the Retina series, which Kodak created with Nagel, about 152 different models of Dr. Nagel designed cameras after they joined forces back in 1932. So Dr. Nagel was quite involved with the Eastman Kodak company and designed some of their finest cameras, just beautiful pieces of photographic equipment. And this was the start of just a great relationship there with the Eastman Kodak company. So just wanted to share that, how you might explore working with one of these fine old cameras. The 127 film is still available. You can get that processed from, many labs today. there's labs all over the United States and all over, all over the planet. So it's not difficult to get these processed in this size. I particularly use a couple of different labs in in the United States. For my work, the Richard's lab, photo lab in Valencia, California, and also the dark room in Southern California, down in the San Diego area. You can reach those. You reach them online. Richard's photo lab, and then also the dark room. Will process these. But like as I said, many labs process this film. Those are just the two that I happen to use. But beautiful camera. It even has the Kodak AG Dr. Nagel name here written. And this little camera comes right to life when you close it up. It snaps closed. It's just a well-designed piece, and it just comes right out, and you're ready to photograph. One of the pocket-sized cameras that they made for pocket photography in the day. A lot of people like putting these in their pockets or, purse or that type of thing, and they're just really great pieces. So just wanted to go over that today on ZBESTDIY. And if you liked it, give us a good vote, thumbs up, and stay tuned for the next edition of ZBESTDIY camera restoration and repair YouTube videos. You have a great day. Thank you.